Then let's just wait a second. It
It's now
says,
live. We're now live streaming
no,
on
it's not.
Facebook.
Is it?
So a massive welcome to everyone here. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Emily Carding, for coming. And it's so lovely to see you. And for those who don't know Emily, Monica and I both know Emily. We both met through separate paths. So it's a really special to have you on with us this morning. But Emily is a wonderful actor, Shakespearean actor and show creator, but also has this incredible history with the tarot. So I thought what we might do first of all is just have a little bit of a chat with Emily just about your work, Emily, in terms of your journey into tarot and something about the art of deck creation and how it led you to the transparent tarot. Then we might invite Emily to unbox her transparent tarot and just show how it works in the context of a reading. And then if you're willing, Emily, we'll open up the room and we'll unmute you, lovely folk who are here, to ask some questions and do a Q&A with Emily. Monica, do you want to say anything before we throw over to Emily? Because I know you're just as much
No,
co-hosting.
go on. I am still fixing the text, so please start.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And Monica isn't Fiona Coffey. We've just done some technical wheezes to make sure that we're both on screen. So
we have possessed each other's souls.
Standard day after Halloween business.
Absolutely. So Emily, tell us, if you will, a bit about how you got into tarot and how that led you. You know, what's your journey and it took you to the creation of a deck like this? It's amazing.
Are you ready for a long answer to that one? Because it's not my first deck. But...
No, I know, yeah.
So it's a long journey. So I first probably became aware of tarot as a child because my mum, who had me when she was very, very young and shockingly young, when I think my daughter is 17 now, my mum was pregnant with me at 17. So it's like horrifying thought. She was very into tarot and things when she was that age. Then when she met my dad, she gave up. But there was a couple of books hanging around. I'm being distracted by my own hand gestures with the card cam here. There was a couple of books in the house that I was strictly forbidden from looking at. So therefore, obviously, I would sneak looks at them at any given opportunity. And one of those was the Devil's Picture book, very 1970s, picture of the devil on the front, you know, it looked very forbidden. And that sort of covered the major arcana of the tarot, and I became aware of that, and a couple of other magical books that were around, one on the grimoires and other things. And so I was aware of it as this mysterious subject that was available to me. And I think when I was in my late teens, my mum gave me her old Rider-Waite, which I didn't get on with at all, but I loved the idea of it. So when I first went away to train as an actor to Bretton Hall, which used to exist up north in Yorkshire, I very quickly happened across a small magic shop called Pentagram, which was down in a basement, and all walls painted black, like exactly what you would expect. And there I became very friendly with the people who ran that shop, and I bought my first deck that I really started working with, which was the Hallow Quest Arthurian Tarot by John Cashlin Matthews. And that I felt I could read intuitively because I was so into Arthurian mythology and so familiar with Arthurian mythology and these things from a very young age, that I could just pick those up and read with them. And for years and years, and I've acquired a few more decks as I went on at that point. And I would read primarily intuitively. Like I made some effort to learn what the meanings should be, but I wouldn't say at that point when I was reading for friends at drama school or whatever for years and things that I had the encyclopedic knowledge of the meaning of the cards, especially the minors. things, you know, especially when you learn in such an unconventional way as I did, but it's like, right away, nah. And then, oh God, lots of life stuff happened, marriage, divorce, child, not in that order. And, and then when I was with my second partner then, and I met lots of people through him. And two of those people that I met were John and Caitlin Matthews, who had created this tarot that I loved so much, and also did Celtic shamanism. So I'd always been very interested in training in Celtic shamanism. And so I'd gone to do a shamanic foundation training course with John Matthews. And he had discovered or channeled or discovered this symbol called the Great Glyph of the She, which you can see here.
Yes.
And that acts as a gateway between our world and the Celtic otherworld, or the land of the She, the Celtic name, the Irish and Scots name for the fairy race, what we call the fairy race. And we use this symbol to do this journey work. And during that journey, I was very explicitly told to use this symbol in my artwork. And I came away from that because I was to pick art like this that you can almost see behind me. And I thought, well, I'd always been very, very interested in the tarot, and at that point already been reading it for like 13 years or something like that. I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll create a tarot deck, since I want a big project, and it will be more than a divination tool. It will be a bridge between the worlds. So that was the first deck that I created, but it wasn't the first one to be properly mainstream published. It was published as a major Arcana edition by an alchemist up in Glasgow called Adam McLean, but it hadn't been out there. But after I created that, I then sort of got the tarot creation bug, and I was up in, we're getting there.
No, I'm actually, this is great. I'm loving exactly all of the detail. I'm agog, so keep, yeah.
I mean, it was a big question. It was a big journey. So it was New Year, it must have been 2000, no, 19, oh, flipping out, what was it? 2007. Yes. I'm really bad at time. 6, 7, something like that. I was up in Scotland by Loch Lomond for New Year, no Wi-Fi or anything. And I'd been thinking for a while, you know, what shall I do for my next deck? What hasn't been done? Because already at that point, there were thousands of decks out there. And I was, you know, I'd done the Tarot of the She, which I wouldn't really call a themed deck, but kind of is. You know, I was thinking in terms of themes, because what else do you think in terms of in terms of what hadn't been done? Woke up at 3 a.m, that mythical time of night when creative inspiration happens, but genuinely sounds cheesy as hell, but I did, just woke up, sat bolt upright with this eureka moment of, oh my God, transparent tarot. And you create these you have to have these really minimalist images, and then they overlay, and then you get a different picture each time from how the pictures interact. I had no idea whether A, it was possible, or B, it had already been done, because I couldn't just like Google it at that point. I didn't have access to the internet where I was. But all of these images started coming to me and ideas of how I would do it. And I started sketching things down. Very quickly realized that if I was going to do that, my usual style, which is
yeah, do show us how it evolves. So that's
so my usual style is very lots of I wouldn't say that it's polished, it's quite raw, but nevertheless there's a lot of detail and a lot of symbols in there, a lot of color, a lot of fluidity.
Yeah, I mean,
I would try and like pack as many symbols into any given card as I could with my previous work, and any of the other art that I did that wasn't necessarily tarot related, the mythic art and the visionary art. I'd be like, how many symbols can I fit in a painting? And then with the transparent, I realized that that would have to change. I would have to completely change my style. It would have to be very, very minimalist. And if I was going to have the court cards and the minors as being quite traditional and Rider-Waite based, so that people could still have something to cling on to, something to relate to, that those would be human figures, then the major arcana needed to be depersonified, so that I would have to distill the symbolism of the major arcana tarot down into one key symbol that would represent that archetype, that would be a key into that archetypal energy, so that those cards could then act as the landscape on which the minor arcana would interact. Then I sent it off to any publisher that I knew of, and nobody would touch it because it was so different, until I came across Schiffer Books, who at that point were very, very new to tarot and really didn't know much about it. I don't think, which worked to my advantage, because when I presented them with this thing, they were just terribly excited about the fact that it was very different and creative. And the acquiring editor, Dinah Roseberry, really stuck her neck out. And originally then it was Peter Schiffer Sr., who sadly passed away a few years ago, who took a risk with it. Because what all the other publishers said was quite correct. They were like, well, we'll have to charge extra for it, and we're not sure people are going to take that leap. And they said, well, we'll have to charge extra for it. Because the process of creating cards like this is so different, but we'll do it and see how it goes, because it was a real risk. So yes, that was the journey from being a little tarot baby to being published in 2008.
Yeah, because you had a first, I mean, I'm dying for you. I mean, there's just so many amazing questions, but yes, so you published the first,
yes, the first edition, which I still use to read with.
Yeah, and now you just
slightly dusty book from the first edition. When was it? I think it was 2000. Oh yeah, 2008. So that's what and it's quite a thick book. It's like sales pitch now. It's quite a thick book that comes with, you get all your words there, all your lovely words. It's upside down, isn't it? So that's the original black and white pictures, and really went into depth because I knew it was such a different idea, such a different concept, that people might be a little bit like, but what do we do with it? In the very first chapter, like in the introduction, it says, okay, so look, you've got the cards, please play with them, please put the book away, play with them for a bit, and then come back to the book. Because when people ask me, you know, what are the rules? How do we do this? It's like, no, this is your tool now, you find your way, just play with it and things. But this goes very in depth into all of the meanings, so it can almost work as a standard tarot book, really, but also how to combine them and so on. But at the point of writing this, and obviously making this, I didn't have a working copy of it to play with, and it wasn't out there in the world, so I didn't have all of the inspirational ideas coming from other people. What I didn't talk about was how I actually created it, which was starting off on sketches on tracing paper, and then
so I mean, can you maybe handle some of those cards and put them to the screen? Because for those who haven't ever come across the transparent tarot before, just to give a sort of view of exactly what it is and how it works. And I know the sort of resolution on the camera is a bit challenging, but perhaps against that white cloth.
It should be, yeah, I can't really get any closer because the tripod that I've got this
one. No, we'll work with what we've got, but so explain how a card is actually made up.
Yeah, I'll start off with using the first edition, and then I'll show you the differences with the second edition.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Just out, brand new, kids, shiny. Yeah. Let's see what comes up.
Fiona, may I just add that on the live on Facebook, for some reason, there is only you and Emily. So only the people who are speaking are view in the view.
Right. So let's see if we can spotlight this, the cards.
So for the moment, I'm just gonna spotlight, the cards.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, because I haven't connected the card cam to audio, because then we'd get horrible echoing things happening.
Oh, that's good.
That's better. And now I can see it better as well. That's great.
Oh, right.
It's a slightly surreal experience, but let's go with it. So the way that these work, I'm going to try to find something interesting to show you. So the major arcana are symbols like this. This is the Lover's card, for instance. So there you have the idea of the polarities coming together in balance, and the yin yang symbol surrounded by the heart, which instantly says love. That's just an intuitive, like, instant symbol. And then if you were to have a minor arcana, they're all color coded elementally and have the suits down the side. So the numbers for the majors are along the top and bottom, and in a different position for each one, so you can see them all at the same time, so they're not overlapping each other. And then the minors, you have the numbers down the side and the symbols down the other side. And of course, they can be reversed or even flipped.
So what's that minor card then, Emily?
So here we have the 10 of Wands going down on top of the Lovers. So with the minors, when I was creating those, because there's billions of different combination possibilities, there was no way I could consciously plan for every single one. So I took each number, so the aces, the twos, the threes, the fours, and made sure that each set of those numbers combined to make a particular pattern. And then that each one in each suit would combine to make a particular pattern, so they weren't interfering with each other. Then I found that, thankfully, in practice, because this is one of those things that I wouldn't know until you take it and you start reading with it, that when you do get cards where the minors seem to be interfering with each other, it looks muddled, then there's a divinatory meaning behind that. There's like a messy area of that person's life. These forces are interfering with each other. Let's cut another one down. The court cards have a bit more detail in them. They're again, so that's the Knight of Pentacles going down there now. So each of the court cards takes up the same space. All of the knights take up the same space, the queens, the kings, and so on. But if you were to get to, you can always flip them if you so choose. But you might see, say, the Knight of Pentacles and the Knight of Cups going down. Let me see if I can find another knight to show you. Oh, here he is. The other thing about transparent cards, it's quite easy to find the one you're looking for. So here we've got the Knight of Cups as well. So he could go down flipped the other way.
Wow.
But if he was taking up the same space, then you might think this is two sides, my hands are shaking a little, two sides of the same personality, potentially. Wow. So those are the sorts of pictures you get. So you're getting a different image each time. If I just pick some randomly now, we have the King of Wands there, the Four of Wands, and the Queen of Pentacles. So they seem to have the same body, but with different heads facing in different directions there. It almost looks like a couple that might be looking for a new home or about to set up a new life together, very much working as a team. You see, it forms a very symmetrical pattern. So if I see a symmetrical pattern there, I think, well, this looks like everything's in balance, everything's going smoothly, working together and moving forward. Whereas when you're presented with a picture that might be unbalanced, there would be a meaning behind that, or somebody's pulling a bit harder, or something's pushing from somewhere else. Or
yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I do. And when you so we might ask somebody to ask you a question in a minute and have maybe a mini demo, but I know you're going to move on to your newer editions. But just before we do, when you say, if you did a sort of simple 3-card reading for somebody, do you tend to lay them out on the white cloth side by side and then build up, or do you advocate a sort of reading where you are looking at them in a stack kind of thing?
I tend to layer them. Yeah. It really depends on the reading that I'm doing. If I'm doing like a fair or something and I'm doing very quick, snappy readings, then I can just put them straight down like this. And then if they want to see them separately, I can see like, look, now let's break it down if we have time.
Yeah.
But you get so much information then in that one image, but you can lay them down one at a time and talk them through while you're doing each one. I can't say that I have a fixed way, much like the deck itself, and much like my work. I tend to be, much like every aspect of my personality, I tend to be quite fluid. But yes, you can get a lot of information just out of 3 cards like that. But then, of course, what you can also do is more like a film strip type thing, which gives you more of a sense of past, present, and future.
Yes.
So you can start laying out as many cards as you like, just overlapping those borders like that.
Wow.
And you start to get a whole like storyboard, really.
Yeah.
Of events. And or you can add, you know, up here as well. You can start adding, however, you know, you're going to get crazy. You can start doing weird angles. You can do whatever you like with it. Just make pictures. What I do when I'm doing an in-depth reading for somebody face to face, sadly, not really advisable at the moment. I'm not really doing face to face at the moment, but when I do, I like to give the cards to the other person and just make them the very, very active participant in that process. And this is one of the ways in which them being unfamiliar to most people works to our advantage, because I can hand them the deck. I think I've done this with you, Fiona, have I?
Yeah, I think you have. Yeah, absolutely.
So I hand them the deck and I say, just go through and take out the pictures that you feel drawn to, and then we sort it out that way. So they've got a pile of, for whatever reason they feel a pull towards it, and they've got a pile of pictures there to work with. And then I'm like, great, got the white cloth laid out on the table, now just make a picture over the whole table. And I can watch them and I can see what they're doing. And so already they're not sat there saying, come on then, psychic. Is he going to come back to me? Or whatever sodding question they're going to have. Instead, we're taking a really in-depth look at their whole psychology, because I'm watching the way that they're making a picture. Are they doing very ordered boxes? Are they creatively spidering things out? Are they putting something down and then changing their mind and picking it up and putting it somewhere else? And if they are putting it somewhere else, where are they putting it? What are they putting it with?
Yeah.
Is there a card when they were going through the deck that they thought they were drawn to, and then they've gone, no, I don't want that, because that they have been drawn to that, but they've rejected it. So I make a mental note of that as well. So I just watch them and I watch that process, and I try and remember as much as I can about that. And then, of course, we have whenever they've decided it's finished. When they decide it's finished, and they've got, right, that's the picture. Then together we can start interpreting that. And they can ask me questions about it. I can ask them questions about it. And be like, that's interesting. Why did you decide to put that there? And we can really go in depth and get an interesting insight into their lives, or whatever the nature of the question was that they asked.
Awesome. So show us the other. So I can see there's some circular ones, and I do happen to know that you published a color version of this year. So show us a couple more decks, and then let's have a little reading, shall we?
Yes, let's. Okay, so the cards are basically the same in the second edition, but the book is, but anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. So also tactically placed around the screen here, the Tarot of the She, which we already talked about a bit, has the conventional tarot structure, but has renamed suits. I'll just lay out a few cards here so that you can see it. Well, it was basically a channeled deck, which does sound like Numptyville, but I assure you it was an intense process. Now here we have a couple of the minor arcana. So the swords are renamed dreamers. It's basically, we go by the elements. So if we take that swords are air, I know some people like to use swords as well, but if we take swords are air, then for the element of air, we have dreamers instead of swords. We have warriors for wands instead of fire. And we have, let's find, dancers instead of cups for water, because I think that dance is a universal language of emotion that transcends language. It's a communicative expression, a direct expression of emotion. And makers for Earth, if I can find one. So that's
I mean, they are really, I mean, I'm a proud owner of the tarot of this sheet. It's just behind me, and the images are really extraordinary. I mean, they're paintings in their own right. They really are.
Thank you. Yeah, I've still got quite a few of the originals knocking about. They're A3 watercolors, the original paintings. So that gives you an idea of what that's like. So yes, it works obviously as a divination tool, but it runs very deep. It's good for spiritual and magical readings, really. I wouldn't, you know, be asking them about, you know, how to get a job or a partner. When you can, but they're going to give you an in-depth magical reason for it. They want to look deep into your soul, but they also are designed to act, as I was saying, as a bridge between worlds. So anybody who's particularly drawn to those energies, I don't think like, I'm not going to say this is a deck with mass appeal. It's for everyone. I don't think it is, but I did design it with the intent that it would be a deck that other people could read the way that I read the Hallow Quest, and that all of the symbolism that you needed there should speak to your subconscious directly in the way of dreams, that it would be, you could be drawn into a picture, and from the picture itself you would get the meaning, and you might be drawn to different parts of the picture each time, but that the meaning would communicate itself to you.
Yeah, wonderful.
Without the need to study, if you hadn't studied the Western mystery tradition or the Golden Dawn or any kind of the Kabbalah, or any esoteric system that you might be required to study for other decks, I wanted you to be able to pick this up and feel something, and for that feeling to have meaning. So that was that.
Wonderful. And then you've got the circular deck, is that similar to the rectangular deck but just a different shape, or tell us how that one works?
So the Transparent Oracle came after the tarot, and I was trying to get the She published because the She still hadn't been published in its entirety at that point, and Peter Schiffer Senior sadly had passed on, and the company had been passed on to his son Pete Schiffer. And I'd said, well, we had sort of had this agreement that, you know, if the Transparent Tarot did well, then they would publish the She. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, that's great, but the Transparent's done so well. Can we have another Transparent deck? And I'm like, no. Because I've done that. So if I get the inspiration to do something else, sure, but I can't just like, oh, here we are, something for the sake of it.
Yeah,
I don't work that way. So a couple of days later, and it was literally a couple of days later, I had the idea for, or I started to have the idea for this. It's an oracle rather than a tarot. So currently it has 70 cards. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about what might be happening in the future, but currently this deck has 70 cards. And that's 10 cards for each of the 7 directions. So north, south, east, west, and the normal correspondences that you might associate with those directions, but also above and below and within. This is the system that one of the systems that I trained within that I find fits very well for me. So above being the celestial realm, the planets, and so on, which are all corresponding cards in here. Below the realm of the ancestors, of the She, of the Grail, of the Hallows, and so on. And then within being the self and the senses, the way that the self relates to the rest of the world. So the senses, but also empathy, telepathy, all of these things, which are represented by patterns coming out of this mask that represents the self. And so it works in principle the same as the Transparent Tarot, in that you layer it. I got a bit bolder with the design of it, so there's a bit more detail in the actual design, and it is designed because it's circular that it can be read from any direction, so it forms like mandalas when you're layering it. As you can kind of see here from these 3 cards. So I've just put down Moon from the direction of above. Here we have Giant from the direction of below. So Giant would be one of your guides from that direction. Each direction has guides. The earthly directions have like weather conditions, time of day, things like that. So this would be a very challenging energy that's there to enable you to reach your potential. So the giant on your quest might be that big challenge that you face. But when you get through that, you gain the wisdom or the treasure or whatever. And then on top of that, we have one of the ones from within that I was talking about. So you can see how many of them have these faces which are all in the same position. So when you have an animal guide or various other cards that might overlay over that face, you get this very shamanic impression of internal and external forces coming together. So it's a sort of a mix between shamanism and other mystical traditions and ceremonial magic. Because basically what I decided to do was just create my own system based on the way that I work, which is that combination of mystical traditions and more traditional folk and shamanic practices with the ceremonial and hermetic side. So you can see how it forms a sort of mandala, and here these lines you can see are coming out from the third eye there for telepathy, those patterns all connecting. And this I think works quite well with generally when I read with this, I just use 3 cards together and you get your meaning from that, but you can always also take either have that around the place just to continue to refer to, take a picture of it, use it in meditation and delve deeper into that as a gateway. And that seems to unlock things in the subconscious as well. People have reported having more vivid dreams and so on after using it. I'm just putting down, that's Mercury, Jupiter. So for the planets, you have the alchemical symbol for the planet, and then you see the actual planets and the orbits. So when you get all of the planets together, they form a nice picture. And then butterfly, which I think was one of the animal guides for, I'm putting myself on this, but either the south because of transformation or the east because of air. I think it's the south one. The butterfly has eyes on its wings to give us a slightly different interpretation of butterfly as a symbol, because I was researching each one. I was like, well, I could almost have given an encyclopedia as an accompanying book to this. I was like, there's too much. It's the whole world. It's the whole universe. And because butterflies have multifaceted eyes that mean that they can perceive things beyond what we can normally perceive. Not only do they stand for transformation as conventionally accepted, but they also stand for sort of spiritual perception, perceiving beyond the usual realm of things. So that's how this deck works on its own. But you can also use it, in fact, you can use all 3 of these together, which I think I will do if we do a reading. I'll show you what I do normally. Yeah. My daily practice is to do 3 together, but let's do a random one. The transparent and the tarot go very nicely together.
Yeah, so I mean, let's do it, because I also want to make sure we've got some time for questions as well. So is there something that we could do which would maybe be a bit like we did at the beginning of our witches show? Well, Emily and I were devising a witches show together in January, and we would do a little reading at the beginning and end of each rehearsal to sort of get inspiration for the day. It was absolutely wonderful. So I'm wondering, work best here, Emily? Should we have should we maybe draw some inspiration, given, you know, can we do something which might be valuable for all of us, like how we you know, how we manage ourselves during this next phase of lockdown, or, you know, how we can invoke our creativity within constraints? Is there something that we could do, or would you prefer to work with an individual? Just guide me here as to what would work best.
That's a lovely idea. Well, I think that's a lovely idea, isn't it? Do we have time for both, perhaps?
I was thinking we're just about, we're just sort of, I was thinking we might have like 10 minutes now for a reading of some kind, so that we could leave about 12 to 15 minutes or so for questions at the end, because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about, you know, how you create decks and about the decks. So I want to make sure there's time for that as well.
Well, how does everybody feel? Do they want, do they like the idea of perhaps drawing 3 cards to see what energies are available to support us through this next difficult, this is going to be a difficult winter. So yeah, so if we're using those 3 decks together, and we can all take an image of that away to help support us through some sort of...
That would be lovely. I'm seeing lots of nodding heads, so I think that's probably a yes. Yeah, great.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, and then we can also through that look at how the 3 decks work together.
Perfect.
So we're going to draw 3 cards, 1 from each deck, to look at what energies are available and willing to support us through. Does that sound like a good way of phrasing it to you? To support us through this next stage.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
That's Dreamer 4 from the Tarot of the She, the equivalent of the 4 of Swords. So already we're getting the sense of just using this again as time to rest and recuperate and draw our resources inwards. And it may be time spent in isolation, but it's time when we can accept. I think acceptance is a good word for that. The key word for that is restoration, but I say there's a real sense of acceptance of the things we can't change. So spending time in stillness to heal those parts of ourselves we can work on. King of Cups from the Transparent Tarot.
Wow, gosh, they really do work so beautifully together, don't they?
Yeah. And because you see the figure of the King of Cups is coinciding with the figure in Dreamer 4 of restoration, and the wings almost become his own wings, we think we're definitely talking about the same person here. And the King of Cups, of course, is that hard-won wisdom, I'd say. You know, he's been through his heartbreaks, he's been through all of those emotional journeys. So we can learn from what we've already been through and seek deeper wisdom there through our experience, and perhaps find ways of supporting others through that as well. Those of us who've weathered the storm and are emotionally capable of helping others with that wisdom gained from experience. And so we'll see what the Transparent Oracle has to bring to this as well. Autumn, the gateway of autumn.
Gosh.
Oh, wow.
And I think if I know that it's an unfamiliar system to everybody, the Transparent Oracle. So each direction of those 7 directions has a gateway card whereby you access those. Autumn as a gateway is the gateway to the direction of the west and to the element of water, but it's obviously the time that we're in now. So it's very specifically saying, yes, these are the energies of autumn, which also suggests to me that it will pass, that it's cyclic, it will pass, we can weather it. It's also a harvest card. You see the fruits here. This time of Samhain that we're in, Samhain last night, Halloween, is a time of reflection, of looking back, of stillness. It's not a time of pushing forward. So if we're going to go into lockdown, in some ways, we can really play into that energy and accept that energy of stillness and reflection. And we're all so frustrated. Beyond that frustration, it may initially feel like, well, we haven't learned anything. It's worse because we're in winter and it's just going to be. We can stop and breathe and look back and think, okay, no, actually, what have we learned? how can we use that to help others to accept it, and how can we heal? What harvest can we gain from these strange times? And yeah, what benefits can we find in this, in just accepting the stillness and healing, which sounds very similar to all the lessons we were told from the first lockdown, only now it's very specifically autumn, but it is the time of year for it now. So of course we didn't ask specifically about the practical considerations, but we were talking about the energies to help us through, and I think my key word for that, yeah, is going to be acceptance. Do you have any input on that image as you see it?
Let's I'll tell you what, let's open it up. If you want folk on the video, can we do a sort of gallery view, Monica?
Review. I mean, I can do it for myself. I don't know, and for Facebook, but I don't know. The others have to do it individually, I think.
Okay.
I was going to say I'll take a picture of this, but obviously I'm using my phone at the moment, but afterwards.
Oh, that would be beautiful. Thank you, Emily. And then we can sort of have it in the thread. Yeah, so let's open it up, and that's a good idea, Monica. I can put it on gallery so that I can sort of see everybody's lovely faces. And if you want to raise a hand, just to give either a response to that reading for Emily, or equally if you want to build and ask any questions about either the decks or the process of making a deck, all would be really welcome. Just unmute yourself and raise your hand and pile in.
And I think I'm going to add as well, while I'm looking at it weirdly at the screen now in this very weird meta way, because we were asking what energies are available to help us through this. And I'm not seeing external energies here so much as internal. It's very much reflecting, you know, with the self, that you have what you need. When you look within, your own wisdom is what will carry you through. You don't need to look to external sources. You can be the light that other people need to get through, you know?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So who'd like to jump in and ask a question or make an observation? Yeah, Luigi.
I have a question. It's more in regards to one of your decks. I'm just looking at the name because I'm afraid to pronounce it wrong.
She.
Tarot of the Sea.
Yeah, I know. It's
Thank
Gaelic.
you.
It's very odd, but it's pronounced she. Don't worry about the spelling so much.
Thank you. I'll get it right as well. I remember you mentioned that this is probably not the right deck to use if you want to ask questions such as, oh, will I get that job, or will it come back to me? And it's to access more the spiritual realm. So what kind of question would you ask in terms of using this deck?
Yeah, I think I meant by that, it's not really an everyday, it's not going to give you mundane answers to mundane questions. So absolutely, you can ask those questions, but it might give you answers that go deeper than you were expecting. But it's a good deck for one of the spreads that I like to use with it, called the Septuagram Spread, which is a 7-pointed star, and that looks at how every aspect of your life is working and helps you with where you are on your soul path. So it's a deck really that will help align you with the deeper meaning of your life moving forward. So for example, if you're going to ask about will I get back together with this person, or how can I get a new job, or whatever, that job, that partner may not necessarily be the right thing for you on your path. And so it will give you a more insight into yourself on a deeper level, which can feel like a bit of a kick in the ass sometimes, you know. Some people don't necessarily like to be shown those aspects. If there's things that they've been in denial about, or if there's things that they've pushed out of the way, it will bring those things to light. It tends to run very deep. But
is that because of the artwork, Emily? Is that because of the I'm really curious about that idea of the sort of deck being able to communicate different things. Is it because the way you've drawn the symbolism that it's sort of more mystical and it just triggers different?
It's designed as a direct connection to the other world and the she don't mess about. So you're not only just using the cards and communicating with your own subconscious via the cards and the symbolism, you're also directly contacting an otherworldly energy, which has a very different perspective from your normal perspective.
Gotcha. Yeah, great.
So yeah, so like I said, it's perhaps not for everyone, but for those that it is for, it works on a very deep level. And so yeah, so it's good for personal development questions. If I have more mundane questions, I would tend to use the transparent. Not that it's necessarily a mundane deck, but that it's very good at the specificities of everyday life. Whereas the she, because that realm isn't particularly good on timings and things like that, and they don't necessarily, and it's not one you can tell from the imagery, it's very otherworldly. It doesn't necessarily deal in things like offices or public transport or things that might go awry as like our everyday lives. It doesn't have that language. It doesn't speak that language the same way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, great. Thank you. Who else would like to ask a question?
Would it be possible to ask a very generalized question?
You can
such
ask.
as things that have been on my mind really. Something like, what is happening to humanity? Or is that a bit difficult?
Okay, well, that would be, well, that's a question for a reading really, isn't it? But if you're asking me, then I think we're going deep into the darkness. I think things are going to get worse before they get better, but then I'm almost convinced, because I'm a hopeless optimist, that things will get better. But I think what's happening is that the darkness is being brought up to the surface so that we can face it. And if we meet that challenge and we face the darkness, and as a collective race of humanity confront our shadow selves and find a way to incorporate that and channel it positively, much like the strength card, I think is what we're going through, then we will be able to evolve and move on as a species. But we're meeting this challenge, which is not just one challenge. We have this ultimate challenge of climate change that it almost feels like a ticking clock. So we have a deadline. We have to learn that kindness is strength. If we don't learn that kindness is strength, we won't survive. We have to learn to accept each other, whether our opinions are polarized in whatever way. We need to learn to see each other to see ourselves in each other, to see our collective human experience, and to move beyond the deep polarization that is currently happening, and learn to be kind and to be compassionate, and that self-interest is not the way forward, that if we can't learn to look after each other first, we won't survive. And that's the lesson we're being forced to confront, and we are being forced to confront it.
Yeah, I'd so agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions about, I mean, I've got a mundane one maybe, but I'm just, I mean, I'll tell you something, Emily. I was just awestruck by the sheer mechanical ingenuity of being able to figure out which symbols go on which places of the cards so you can layer them up. I mean, there's just a really technical achievement in these decks, and the same true with the Oracle. I haven't seen a single layering, and we did quite a few in that month, that didn't look beautiful, didn't look resonant. I'm just in awe of how you did that, and kind of how did you do it, and how long did it take, and you know, that kind of stuff.
Oh gosh, I mean, I feel like anything I create is a collaboration with some unseen inspirational force, because the transparent tarot, it felt like, well, I mean, okay, let's answer a mundane question in a mundane way to begin with. So the circle that you see here is part of the Wheel of Fortune here, the wheel card. That circle was the basis of all of the geometry within the transparent tarot. It was, how do things relate to this circle position? So as you see, and it's not quite central, it's slightly above. So here we have the lovers again, and you can see that those two circles overlap beautifully, and then the heart exists outside of that circle and relates to that circle in that way. If that was to be reversed, we would then get a vesica piscis sort of effect. Then I would take cards that, I don't know whether we have time for all of this answer, but cards that I knew had to have an energy that would relate to each other in a particular way. So the Emperor and the Empress, for example, and I knew I wanted them to be landscapes, as I said, on which the minors interrelated. You have the Empress as the natural landscape, and then the Emperor on top of that as the city, as the structure, and these phallic symbols, as you can see, the skyscrapers, and everything that the city represents. Those two exist as a pair. So there would be certain pairings that were particularly designed to go together. And then I had this circle. So either things would be within that circle or outside of that circle in some way, you see. The minors for each suit, I think I started in the middle and then worked my way outwards. And as I said, I was using tracing paper to make sure that nothing got too cluttered. But I also feel like I was helped by this direct inspiration. Like anything that came to me, and the whole idea just came to me. It couldn't have happened through some sort of linear thought. It felt like it already existed somewhere. It just seemed to work. There wasn't a great deal of trial and error. I feel like I got lucky. Then when it got to the transparent oracle, and I think I still have a lot of the original tracing paper and sketches and things for that, there was a lot more geometry involved. It was like taking this idea and developing it to the next level. So there's different, there was triangles and squares and different numbers of pointed stars that everything would relate around. But because it's circular, and therefore I was really creating something that would form mandalas, it was a different challenge. But I knew that a lot of the cards would end up taking up the same space, and therefore that became an intentional design feature. Let me see if I can demonstrate that through the masks. So here we have voice, which was, so you see this, I don't know whether you can make it out, but there's three faces here in the circle. Yeah. And there's a sort of a trumpet coming out of the mouth, which is then giving out sonic patterns that represent sound, patterns that represent sound. And then if I find another one with the three faces, so that's the gateway for within. So that's your main three faces. So you see that they are designed to take up the same space in that way. And then, that's one that I was looking for. So the animal guide of owl then becomes a mask that goes over the top of any of those. In that shamanic way, as if you're channeling that energy. And then any other cards that, again, is it within that face? Is it outside of that face? Does it form a circle around it or a triangle around it? So there's the landscape, mountains. So yeah, so there was a lot more. So that's obviously using a triangle as its, and so I had a particular size triangle, a particular size square, a particular space obviously for these faces to interact, and various stars and things where different features on each card would be specifically intended to overlap with.
That's incredible. So I mean, given that, and given the massively chunky book that goes with it, I guess it's going to be like a real education for somebody, you know, to
I mean, the book for the Oracle ended up being much smaller than it could have been, because I had like 6 months to do the whole thing. So you're asking about timescales. The Transparent Tarot, I think, took about a year, 6 months for the cards, 6 months for the book, and the book for the Transparent Tarot is chunky. It's large, but the book for the Transparent Oracle, because there was so much I could have put in it, it would have been ridiculous had I actually done that. So it's still a reasonable sized book, but it's smaller. But what it gives you is a starting point to do your own research. So it can become your own very personal set of meanings. I would highly recommend, notebooks and your own personal work with that one. I had so little time. I can't remember why I had so little time. I probably foolishly agreed to a deadline with no concept of linear times, I seem to do. But I had like 6 months, I remember, to do like the whole thing. And I was having a proper breakdown by the time. I'd just done the Transparent Tarot, which was incredibly intense. And the She before that, I was doing this deck. And by the time I was getting towards the end of the book, I was just properly losing it. And I was like, oh, I can't, I was burnt out, creatively burnt out. And a friend of mine, David Rankin, who writes on grimoire tradition and magical traditions, I remember him sitting down with me on a Skype call and saying, what do you need? So he actually ended up writing the section on the spreads, which I don't tend to use, but there is a section on spreads for the Transparent Oracle in that book. But yeah, it was intense. I don't know I feel like that whole process of creating all 3 of these decks was a really intensive channeling over the 3 years or whatever it was that I did them in, and I don't know whether I've ever fully recovered from that. I always feel like there's a slight edge of burnout, that I can easily slip into burnout at any point. So although I'm frustrated with this year, of course, being in theatre, it has been, everything sort of got cleared from the diary, although my diary did fill again with online stuff and whatever. But it's been interesting actually coming back to this again, being forced to not travel the world and stay at home and rest and things. Might not have been, on a very personal level, a slightly selfish level, for me, not that much of a bad thing, because I really needed deep rest. Yeah.
Danielle says in the chat, could you write on a book on it later? She used to work with Dave a long time ago.
Oh, write a book on?
I guess the larger book on the Oracle, maybe, or is that what you meant, Danielle? Oh, we've lost her reception. So it is getting to.
Yeah, I mean I'm gonna, because you guys, this is in like a small group. I'm not making a public announcement about it yet, but I've just signed a contract to do a 2nd edition of the Transparent Oracle.
Hang on. This is a small group, but you're live streamed on the main.
Well, I mean, it's fine. I've signed the contract, so it's all happening. So I'm doing a 2nd edition of the Transparent Oracle because the first one's nearly run out. It's quite difficult to get hold of now. So there will be some extra material.
And you've just released a new version of the Transparent Tarot, the colour one as well.
Yes, no, great. I'm leaving that so I can take a picture of it. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to put that to one side. Yes, so, well, we have just a couple of them. Oh, we're running out of time. But so the new edition, I haven't got the original edition box to hand because it was a bit rubbish. So the original box had a flimsy transparent lid and it wasn't very good. So this is the new 2nd edition of the Transparent Tarot, which is just out. It's in this lovely, sturdy box with a magnetic lid.
Ooh, we like that.
Oh, we like a magnet. It's chunky.
We like a magnet on our lids.
Look, it's a chunky, sturdy box. I love a magnet on a lid, me. You get this transparent insert, which I guess you could just demonstrates the idea as you open it, which you can use as a bookmark or frame it or whatever. I don't know, whatever you like. And then the book is now, oh, it's all colourful. There's extra material in the book which covers some of the stuff that I learned after from other people using it and from myself using it. So it covers using it in combination with other decks, and there's some charts in there for simple access to the meanings and so on as well. And something, I ran a workshop for the Tarot Association, TABI, you guys probably know TABI, Tarot Association of the British Isles, a couple of years back, which was on creating sigils using the Transparent Tarot. It lends itself to that really well. So the section in here, which covers what I did in that workshop, which is that creation of sigils using the deck. So all this new material, and also the inside is full colour.
How
Yay.
exciting, yay.
It's beautiful design this time round.
Well, since this
So
season,
look, so that there you can see that's all of the 8s together.
Mm.
So that idea that I was telling you about when, yes, each of the suits and each of the, it shows you all of those things. So that's the very chunky book. And then you have, it comes with a cloth. So it comes with a white reading cloth, which would be packaged in that side of the box. I've been using this one a bit. And then for some reason, but you know, I don't mind it so much, they've, the cards themselves are the same, but the quality is better because the original edition tended to come with like this weird sticky oily coating. And I'd have to, and everybody would be emailing me saying, I got your cards and they're sticky. I'm like, yes, just wash them. You can wash them because they're plastic. But these ones you don't have to wash. They're perfectly clear, and the color print quality on them, I don't know whether you can tell from this camera, is just so much better. The borders, they've made this sort of silver instead of the black, so they're slightly less intrusive. And the majors are now, instead of Roman numerals, are just normal numbers. But
you
so
must
yeah,
be very proud of it.
it's very clear and very bright, and you can lay even more cards now. I'm super chuffed with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And look, just think about all the money everyone's saving on not having to buy party frocks and cocktails by not going out. They can let it all into your tarot deck, can't they?
Well, they could,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we'll definitely post a link to that because yeah, I'm sure you will incite a lot of deck lust through
I
this.
realise I haven't shown many of the cards now, so I'm sort of trying to show you, see how many you can layer and still get sort of a picture you can read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really, really pleased. The quality of the second edition is just so much more vibrant. I don't know why I've still been reading. I think I'm just emotionally attached to my old first edition deck, but getting these out again now, I'm like, yeah, do you know what? I need to shuffle these and start actually using the second edition because it's just better. Yeah, so now you can really see, this is all the majors I'm working through here. You can really see how each one is a depersonified symbol that represents the power behind that card. And you see the moon and the sun, they're designed to go together. The world also goes there anyway. But I see that we're out of time. So there you go. That's given you an idea at least anyway.
I can't thank you enough for, I mean, it's just been an absolutely wonderful hour. It's lovely to, first of all, it's really lovely
to see you.
Yeah, but also it's just been so inspiring and educational and fascinating. And we may well have some comments in the thread and some questions in the thread, but dear Emily, at least today is still part of our part of our tarot circle. She may find like it's just become all too much after today, but like I think you'll be around to answer any online questions. And
yeah, we're all around, aren't we?
We are all around. So but yeah, Rena says, I love the way how transparent deck evokes connectivity between cards as a novice reader, quite challenging at times to relate to the cards together, but doing like a storyboard, it encourages more awareness and connectivity in thoughts. It's amazing.
Oh, so, thank you.
I couldn't have summed it up better myself. So
thank you so much.
With love, we'll say au revoir for now, but thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you so much, Emily. That was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Emily.
And we'll see you again.
Take care, everyone. Take care of yourselves and each other.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.